Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. Today is April 11th and I want to give you the 411. It's basically almost like it's a blessing. I won't call it a miracle, I'll call it a blessing. But recently, yesterday as a matter of fact, I woke up and journaled that I'd had a dream about my father. In my dream, my dad and I were talking, and I got emotional. I started to cry, and normally in the past as a child in front of my father, that would be something that I would be reprimanded for, but he took and embraced me and nurtured me. You know, one of the things that hadn't been really done in the past for a lot of us by our fathers, and it felt amazing. Well, on this same day, my dad actually called me and had an amazing conversation with me. As you know, I've been having some challenges with speaking with my family, and part of that is because I'm probably sharing a lot of truth, and it might have been maybe a mistake to share that truth on this type of platform. But as you can understand from someone who doesn't have a whole lot of people to talk with, an introvert who is an only child who can't have the ability to share that burden with siblings, not even my legal siblings, for whatever reason, it felt really good to tell my story on this platform. So I appreciate that you've been following along, subscribing, sharing, supporting all of this journey. And I hope that this will bring about a success story that I can report a little bit more fully. Right now, the way that it stands is that I'm very likely to be visiting with my father probably this weekend and having a legitimate conversation, and that's something that hasn't happened in the past. And so to me, the situation is, again, it's not quite miraculous. However, it is worth noting that, again, I dreamed about this and it happened. And how could anyone know that? Well, I journal my dreams regularly, and I write these things down that I see in my dreams and that I feel in my dreams. And so I start to wonder about all the people who are out there, you know, manifesting, who are writing down, you know, what their income is going to be and how much they're going to get. And I wonder if anyone is feeling as wealthy as I do when I get to speak with my family. For the longest time, I was able to speak with a good portion of my family for pretty much whenever I wanted to. Now, it's gotten to the point where I have to send a letter because the text messages that I send, they're not really well received. But even the letters that I send are read in people's minds. And what I mean is, they're not hearing me speak. They're not hearing me when I say how grateful I am to have had these opportunities and hopefully to continue to have these opportunities. But today I wanted to give you the scoop about how wealthy I feel just from having a regular conversation with my dad. You know, these are things that not everyone has the opportunity to do. In fact, the last time my father contacted me, it was because one of my uncles had passed away. And you know, for that lineage, for that family, they're no longer able to speak with that source of insight. And so, because of our communication barriers, we've gotten to a point where, for whatever reason, we don't always acknowledge one another. And sometimes we can, even in spite of whether we're wealthy or not, and I'll say that because both of my parents have different perspectives on and different positions when it comes to having had money or not having had money, even, or not even, but whether we are wealthy or not, we can choose to mistreat one another or to treat one another. And for the longest time, the persons who were treating me with basically with income. You know, a lot of people will just give money and think that that's the most helpful thing that they can do, when really the most helpful thing they could have done was to listen to one another. So these are a little bit ambiguous. Sometimes when I say certain things, it's because I don't want to call out my parents or anyone to get recognition. It's kind of like the great Eminem said, you know, I'm sorry, parent, I didn't mean to hurt you. I didn't mean to make you cry, but tonight I'm sharing, and I'll say this morning, I'm sharing what's in my heart. And because I'm sharing these things that happen to be based and founded in truth, I think that a lot of people are repelled by these truths. And they're repelled because there's a lot of fear. And what was taught to us again in the past was to fear emotion. And that's why I said, you know, when I had my dream and I cried, I broke down and started crying in front of my father. He got, in reality, in the past, he might have gotten kind of fearful and would say something like, stop crying, you know, don't do that. Anytime we touch on emotion, people who are self-absorbed will basically try to turn it inward and not recognize that the other person's actually in pain. Like, for an example, in 2 cases, I had a grown man sitting next to me in the in the passenger seat, and I was in the driver's seat, so there was a grown man in the driver's seat as well. And while I was driving, the person in the passenger seat began to yell at me. That really distracted me from what I was doing. Imagine you're sitting there coding or entering data or listening to a customer or even listening to a song. You know, whatever you're doing, you're just doing it with focus and trying to do something out of creation. Imagine you're doing that. And then imagine someone next to you just goes off yelling at you. Are you able to focus on that task, really? And so in both cases, 2 different things happened, but the outcome was the exact same. In both cases, not only was there a person yelling at me in the passenger seat, but there was also someone behind the passenger who was there to help for whatever reason or to participate for whatever reason. And the people in the back seat were more tied to the passenger than to myself, even though we're all really connected. And so the people in the back seat didn't do anything to help alleviate the circumstance. If you've ever watched a show like Stranger Things or any of the supernatural shows, you'll know that there was a peacemaker in the group who saw that there was a rift between mutual friends, and they got everyone to communicate. That's what I'm trying to do on this channel, and that's why I believe the subscribership continues to climb. That's why I believe people continue to watch these videos, and what I share is pretty diverse. But at my core, what I'm concerned with is our environment, our community, our well-being. And a lot of people will tell me that I'm being difficult and that they're going to therapy and that I'm gaslighting them by saying things that are malevolent. The thing that I like to say is the truth. And for a lot of people who believe that it's malevolent, we run into communication difficulties. Last year around this time, it's coming up on Easter where I'm at, and last year around this time I had 2 very close people who sent some strange things, the strangest things to me on Easter itself. And I wrote back to them, Happy Easter, I hope you're doing okay, something along those lines. And, I'm paraphrasing, but this is the truth. Anyone can look at the text message threads and see that this is the truth. And for whatever reason, I was met with a lack of response to anything that had to do with Easter, to anything that had to do with what in our society has evolved around around tradition and around possibly insight. And I say possibly just basically for anyone out there who is either a non-believer or unmoved by these concepts. And I say that because it seems like the peacemaker in that book did a lot of things that were vilified. In fact, that guy was nailed to the cross, according to the story, whether you believe it or not. For me, I believe that we're either good people or bad people, and how we treat one another a lot of times has to do with how we relate to those other people. If we can't relate to someone, well, we can't relate to the fact that they're in pain. Like, it causes me great pain when I can't talk with my parents, especially since they haven't left this plane of existence. And so if I can't speak with my parents because they're withholding the conversation, that's called ghosting. That's also called gaslighting, when people talk with you and try to tell you that you said something that you didn't say and try to convince you that you're wrong. And for me, I don't really have a concept of trying to make someone feel like they did something wrong or right. I just have, again, a basic idea that this particular platform for me has been my opportunity to speak and to speak my mind and to have other people see, what I'm doing, why I'm doing it, and maybe whether or not I succeed at something. For the most part, I believe that I've been very successful in my life. I've been able to arrange everything around me in ways that are apparently bringing things to order. And by bringing things to order, I bring peace to myself. By having less, I have more. And so I'll go to places like Big Bend National Park and spend time in a tent, usually, hopefully, not necessarily surrounded by campsites where there are a bunch of screaming people or car alarms going off inadvertently, or even purposefully, when people double lock the car so that they can have the beeps and chirps and chimes and everything in the middle of nowhere, where really we're not really going to get robbed anyway. The fear of loss of material things, it seems like, is so much more damning that than the fear of loss of family, that sometimes family will go years without talking with one another. And as those years go by, the realization for some is that maybe we shouldn't have spent all that time not talking with one another. So that's why I've continued to reach out in various formats, including this channel, to my loved ones. And by my loved ones, I mean everyone. We treat everyone a certain way when we know them, and depending on how we know them. But as far as strangers are concerned, a lot of us just really have disregard for strangers. Today in the world, on this informative day, I'd like to reiterate that a lot of us are going through a lot of tragedy, not just inclement weather, but inclement relationships with one another. And so when I share the idea of maybe we need to, don't need to, but maybe we can, and not maybe, we can pray for one another, with one another, for reasonable rainfall. So on my channel, I really try to organize these positive thoughts in a positive direction. And no matter what kind of pushback that I receive in return and pain that it causes to hear from some of the people that basically will tell me that I'm talking in disjointed, incoherent. Sorry about that. The production lights almost went out. Had to move so that they would turn back on. Incoherent way. The fact is that all of these little synchronicities, all of these idiosyncronicities, just like the lights almost going out right then, and me, regaining the spotlight, just like that. All of those things are things that we can recognize. And some of us are almost in a dream itself. Life is but a dream. And some of us are seeing these synchronicities, and some of us can go back through a catalog of anyone's video and hear things that resonate, where we go, wow, I just talked about this, or wow, I just saw something like that, or wow, that timing of the bird singing when this person talked about something or another was very unusual. And so all of those things are things that someone who believes in peace might be able to see. If we were children on a playground playing together, you're either going to continue to try to find a viable solution when you're playing with your classmate or whoever it is that's there that you're resonating with, that you're building something with in the sandlot, or you're going to be very disagreeable. You're going to stand up and kick sand in the face of your playmate and walk off and never apologize for it. Those unapologetic actions are the things that I believe we were told to hold inside and never speak about. And if we don't acknowledge something, we can't hardly begin to correct it. We can't hardly begin to apologize for it. And so, again, I have my own things that I've done that I've tried my best to apologize for. And the way that I live my life, I think, demonstrates, at least to a degree, that I'm trying to pay my dues. And paying my dues is different from paying my bills. Paying my bills is something that has been challenging based on the lifestyle that I attempted to achieve and how I attempted to achieve it because of a lot of circumstances. When I shifted from the corporate world, for an example, to giving tours to places like Big Bend National Park, I'll keep mentioning that place very frequently because that's pretty much one of my favorite places on earth. When I did that, it was right before COVID. And when COVID occurred, it was very difficult to bring strangers into my vehicle. And so for a while, I was pretty much only able to bring friends and family in my vehicle. And friends and family, some of them were very fearful about COVID. And some of them wouldn't even travel anymore because of what was told to them on the news. When you say words have a lot of power. And noose, they're very similar. When we get too hung up in the news, sometimes we begin to choke. And when we choke, that can be a fearful experience. And when we want to live and don't panic, and we want to do that because it brings us great joy to share time with one another, then we try to help other people stay afloat. And so hopefully I'm helping people to stay afloat by sharing these challenges with the corresponding resolutions. And hopefully I'll be able to bring you some more cheerful insight going forward. This particular year, this video is being shared on the day that I recorded it. And normally for most of my videos this year, they were recorded sometime last year. And I had preloaded this entire year's worth of videos because I didn't want to continue to share things on here while I was focusing on the things that were of utmost importance to me. However, it seems like I've almost shared one full month's worth of videos on the days that they happened, or very close to the days that they happened. And so what I did was, like for an example, today there was a scheduled video, and I'm going to move that video to next year on whatever the first day that there is no video being presented. And next year, that video that's being presented will be, I don't know, something like January 23rd or something like that. And so I've got almost 1 month's worth of videos posted for next year as well. And with all of that in mind, the fact is that this isn't currently something that I'm earning any kind of income off of, although I was monetized in the beginning when YouTube only required 100 subscribers to be monetized. Right now, the way it stands, you need 1,000 viewers and a pretty decent amount of watch time in order to be monetized. Speaking of watch time, the most watched video on this channel has to do with a watch, a smart device. And to me, that's interesting because without that watch, there might not have been a whole lot of people who watched some of the other videos that I've shared. So all of the different random synchronicities that have brought us together, whether it's music, whether it's nature, whether it's family, has a lot to do with love. And if you can see love, then you're going to be hard-pressed to form a relationship and then turn your back on it. So for all the parents out there who are having difficulties communicating with their children, for all the children who are having difficulties communicating with their parents, for all of every friendship that has soured where people are having difficulties communicating with one another, I would like to suggest that maybe we should look internally, find out if we're having communication-based difficulties because of fear. Because we fear what's being told to us. We fear it as something that might be judgment or criticism. If we can learn to respond to one another in ways where we use words like, I feel like, and this is how I felt, and this is what I've thought about, and this is how it made me feel. And if we can use words like, I'm truly sorry for causing you whatever distress I've caused you, and recognizing that distress as being based in reality, if we can truly acknowledge one another, I think we can have true relationships. An apology is never something where you say, I'm sorry that you feel that way. That's basically just saying, you feel that way. I'm sorry that you feel that way. That has nothing to do with being apologetic. What has a lot to do with an apology is acknowledging the other person's perspective and going from there. In today's fear-based world, there's a lot of bigotry and narcissism. Both words are very similar when you look at the definitions, and that self-centeredness is what causes us to overlook segments, nations, and even individuals for whatever reason we've chosen to dismiss them. So I hope you haven't chosen to dismiss me from your feed. I hope you haven't unsubscribed. I hope you continue to give the thumbs up. Again, if you don't like this, go ahead, give the thumbs down. And either way, I know that that will help the algorithm. I know that that'll help this content find its meaningful location. And I know it's going to be a slow-going process for me, unless by some miracle, maybe the times have changed and the energy has shifted and people choose to share positivity and people choose to share wealth. Right now, more than anything, in terms of what's on this earthly existence, I could certainly use some help. I've really fallen into some challenging times when it comes to repaying some outstanding debt. And that outstanding debt has continued to grow because, as we know, the banks have gotten a little bit more stringent. And so to get those 0% interest rates and to refinance things to the point where I can at least have a little bit more time to cover my bases has been a little bit challenging. So if anyone out there happens to have a great wealth of wealth to exchange for this great wealth of information, I would absolutely appreciate it if you clicked on the description and found a way to share so that the animals that I'm tending to and family that I'm tending to in my neck of the woods can probably receive a lot more positivity. You know, yesterday I was able to fill the bird feeders, plant some plants, and some plants that are going to flower. I already have flowering plants right now, in spite of the hailstorm that we received the other week. There are things that are growing, there are things that are flowering, there are still animals that are coming around, and I know when I go into the real remote wild places like Big Bend National Park, that they don't have any people helping there. And I know that, you know, we're not supposed to help the animals and the wildlife that are in those areas. What I'm saying is it's truly challenging where there is no compassion anymore. And if you go into the national parks lately, you'll see, if you watch my videos from the past, you'll see it seems like there's a lack of consideration even for the people, for anyone, for anything around us. And for that reason, it's just a destructive tendency. And in a lot of ways, I feel like sharing this kind of information puts me in alignment with people who have destructive tendencies, who want to make me feel a certain way. And that's basically why I tried to preload the videos and not have anyone commenting on them for this year. It was a little bit overwhelming to try and deal with my own personal challenges in my own personal family, with my own personal finance circumstances, while also attempting to communicate with people who, for whatever reason, wanted to exacerbate the chaos rather than the process of bringing order to the things around them that they could bring order to. So I know a lot of you are in the same circumstance monetarily, and also, like I say, I really believe that there are a great fortunate amount of people out there who maybe have the monetary means, but maybe they also have some difficulties communicating with their closest family and friends. And maybe it's just a little bit of fear of what might be lost, that causes us to continue to maintain the superficial relationships where we continue to just wake up, watch the news, watch the satires, and that's our relationship. That's our established relationship with one another. We don't even go so far as to have an actual conversation that allows us to bridge the friendships and family relationships that our grandparents seemed to value in the past. Without our grandparents, without our ancestors around, right now the biggest value, I think, is unfortunately money. And so money is a great tool. I've been able to use it to, again, to build the lifestyle of my dreams. And in hindsight, I recognize that my dreams have been built off of the labor of a lot of other people who really put in the work, who really put in the effort. And that basically is something that I think our fathers could stand to talk about, and our mothers might want to recognize that the comforts or even discomforts that they've had could have been lessened, and lessons are words that I think are applicable in this particular video. So thanks for watching, for whatever lessons you might have learned about here. And I want to tell you right off the bat how grateful I am to have had a conversation with my father in reality, and also how interesting it was that I dreamed about speaking with him before it actually happened. So if any of you are not journaling your dreams out there, and if you heard this from me directly or from anyone else, how important it is to consider journaling your dreams. For one, it helps improve cognition, mental cognition. and it helps people to remember the conversation stream that's occurring throughout the day, because you're challenging your mind to recall things that sometimes we've just let slip out of our minds because for whatever reason. For some people, dreams are no longer important. For other people, they continue to dream. I dream of a time when we're all able to communicate together without challenges, without fear, and without bigotry. And bigotry, again, is just ignorance. Ignorance it's divisive ignorance based on something that usually was instilled by someone else. And that's basically also known as bullying. If we bully one another to the point where we would ghost one another, and I know we do, because again, this is happening, and this has happened in my own family, then we get to a point where we're really no different from any other society that has really cut off its wealth. And the wealth of family and friendship is the most important wealth that's out there. So I'm extremely wealthy, and I also am extremely selective in where my investments are made, because some investments are absolute losing return type investments. And some investments, well, they help nourish one another in peace and in spirit. So that's basically, again, what this channel is about. That's why you're hearing these topics. That's why you've seen these songs that I've shared. And that's also why I try to show you that we need to have a little bit more compassion. Not we need to, we do have more compassion, and we can see where things are in this current state and globally, where we need to focus our attentions on. And it doesn't have to do with trying to build more wealth. It has a lot to do with having a little bit more influence over what it is that we do, and to set better examples. Now, when our parents have the majority of the wealth, when our predecessors have the great majority of the wealth, and they set the example by basically trying to show how they can one-up one another, charge more tariffs, and do things that, maybe appear a certain way because they're wearing a different kind of suit or a different colored hat or whatever. All of these things are things that we either want to emulate because someone else taught that was a valuable thing to emulate, or that we can look upon as something that's bullying. But, again, what do I know? I'm just the child in the relationships that I've been talking about for so long here, that again, I've brought upon me a great deal of firepower in the terms of words and missile words that have been launched in my direction for whatever reason. But, words do hurt. Sticks and stones can break my bones, and words, they definitely hurt. What hurts more than that is never hearing any words from the people that could have spoken them with you, even in haste, so that you could try to remedy the war that continues to be marching on. Yesterday I shared a song, and I recorded that the other day, but the song is called Hope to Die. And it starts out saying something like, I've gone hungry, you have too, I can see it inside of you, still marching on, the war won't end, just yesterday you were my friend, still see each other with hardened eyes, see through the darkness of pain and lies. So the resolution was, we're not friends, we're seeing each other with hardened eyes, and then we see through the darkness of pain and lies. And then it ends saying, I've gone hungry, you have too, I can see it inside of you. And I swore a promise to my friend, to my love, and it's basically ends with hope to die. We used to, as kids, we used to cross our heart and hope to die. And my promise to anyone who I've known is love, truth is truth. And that's really all there is to it, you know. Love is love and truth is truth. And how we handle one another or anything that we do, including the work we do, if we don't love it, it's going to have errors, inconsistencies, falsehoods, and it's going to be based on just trying to make paper. And paper is one-time use. Paper is one of those products where we continue to damage the environment by printing things that we don't need to print. How many of you still subscribe to newspapers that come in those little plastic baggies that get thrown into your yard daily or even weekly? How many of you do that? I used to do the same thing. I'm not immune from any of this consumption situation that we've all grown together. I am, however, saying that if the wealth, if the majority, if the people on top are bullying everyone in alignment all the way to the point where our own parents wouldn't speak with us because as a child we see something that's wrong and they want to bully us until we also conform, well, I think we have a great societal illness. What do you think? Why don't you let me know in the comments here? I'll actually open this one up for the people who have listened all the way through. Hopefully for this particular segment, and because of the fact that comments have been limited on all of these other videos, hopefully we'll already have either weeded out the people who just want to be negative, or will allow for some people to actually speak some sense, you know, and sense adds up to dollars. And whether they're virtual or real, the fact is that real sense and real wealth has nothing to do with paper money. But for those of you who do have paper money and a lot of it, again, hope you click on the description and find a way to contribute as fast as you can, because I've really been staring down the barrel of a circumstance, and it's not looking that promising if you don't believe in miracles, and I do. So until next time, thanks again for supporting this journey with one another. I appreciate it very much. Peace, love, and all that old school stuff. And welcome, Dad, to being another fan on this channel. Thank you so much for helping us to all grow in the right direction with all the insights that we've learned over the past. Peace.